Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. I'm just going to walk you through cold calling and just overall managing prospects based on my experience of working with sales over my career, either as a customer success manager, either as a technical expert on a particular software or working on sales forecasting. I've worked with sales predominantly over 35 years and I've seen ups and downs and different things on interaction. My goal of this presentation is to help guide you through some best practice and tips and technique that can help you succeed in terms of growing your pipeline and expanding whether existing accounts or reaching out to prospects. Here's my agenda. It's a pretty quick agenda. I'll talk about cold calls. I'll talk about alternatives to it. I'll talk about gatekeepers. And I'll talk overall the sales process and how things can change a bit compared to where we were 25, 30 years ago. This is a bio about myself. I'm a CPA, CGA, but I've been working with data either from a financial reporting perspective or helping assist clients to drive better decisions based on data. Either way, I've had to work and heavily involved with sales throughout my career. Cold call is an old method that you basically just pick up the phone or you do a reach out. The old days, this was a way to kickstart some conversation with. We didn't necessarily have the technology, so you did some reach out and you did some calling. Nowadays, it's a lot more tougher to do these cold calls, and especially if they're not targeted right and you don't get to the right person talking to, and there's some frustration around doing this cold calling. So every company is a little different, especially when you're doing with startups with new technology to basically how you drive it back through. I've talked over the past few weeks and months with startups around how they're marketing their goal strategy, and not once do I bring up cold calls. I talk about other methods of prospecting, and I'll go into that further as we proceed through this presentation. As you can see here, cold calls, if you look at them, the biggest issue with cold calls is calling somebody up. If they're really not interested in buying, it's really hard to get their focus. In a lot of cases, they won't return the call. And also, if they feel you're too pushy on something, and they're not that interested, it can basically cause some ill will with you. So you really have to kind of look at, is this the best method I want to do a reach out with, and does it make the most sense for long term prospecting or account management to grow the relationship? There are other ways to prospect. You can do work with marketing and do business to be email marketing invites to certain events. You can do look at prospects, and I've done this quite a bit on LinkedIn. You can follow people on there, comment on their blogs, to get the understanding of it. And then you can do eventually reach out. Have you, considered doing this if they're on a particular blog? You can tag people in your blogs. There's just different ways to do it. The third point is I write blogs quite a bit. In part of those cases, I pull information from different sites and I basically talk about things. And for example, if it's a data AI issue, I'll talk a bit about my experience on deployments. If it's cybersecurity, I'll talk a bit about what I've done with security assessments. But it's really about basically showing prospects and clients that you're a subject matter expert as part of trying how you're going to grow your business. You can monitor website usage. That's where you see Zoom info and other things. But you got to be cognizant of this because there's been issues around with Oracle and other companies come up, how they garnered that information and used it. It's kind of something you have to be cognizant of. Social media and decision makers. I like to look at what companies are going on, where their focus point by getting that information from their websites or from their investor relations or different information or even from the sector. You could find potential buyers, but the issue is sometimes these buyers will reach out to you. You almost have to have a way to kind of see things like we saw with outages that happen with CrowdStrike. That also makes these companies look out and see if there's other alternatives. So it's something to bear in mind. It's always good to have client referrals as part of an industry or a sector to do that. And then you can encourage to join local networking events like you go to I don't find when I've done these local networking that hanging out business cards always works. I think the key is just establish contacts on LinkedIn. Mostly you see the QR code and you linked into them. So it's all how you basically do the networking. A lot of talk is about the gatekeeper. And whenever you get into a gatekeeper, there's a bit of a responsibility. My experience has been with the gatekeeper is you don't necessarily talk to the gatekeeper right away. You initially have that conversation when you're prospecting out where you're trying to get the introduction to the particular person that's initially doing the reach out and touch point. And then the sales process can go through a request for information, a request for proposal, quotation, and you can kind of take it from there. The gatekeeper typically is not one that I've seen an interaction right away. They usually come in after the fact when we're starting to engage with further discussion. So I'd be hesitant how you would approach the gatekeeper. I just because if they're really have other people feeding them information, you don't want to kind of circumvent the chain of command. What I have learned from prospecting and just working with sales is there's certain ways that you can leverage information on sites like Investor Business Daily, Seeking Alpha, because it gives you information what's going on with the company in terms of where their focus is, where their investments are, and it can give you an idea when you're prospecting in a particular sector, a segment, or an industry. It can give you some idea. I also like to understand where my clients are in their product life cycle. I review their websites to see what's going on with them. And you can also look at a particular industry, whether it's packaging, whether it's chemicals, whether it's manufacturing, widgets, or whatever, you can get some information. Most companies also have at partner ecosystem, and that's critical with any sort of sales process, right? Because as a company, you want to build your ecosystem up because the business partner is part of the overall sales cycle, and you want to work with them accordingly because they also own relationships, right? The key is to keep those relationships because people move from company to company and to understand that. The other thing is ecosystem on product development, product knowledge, and training. It's critical for supporting clients and prospects, especially depending on the role partners play in your sales cycle. This is the one last point that I've always had concerns about. I've seen it throughout my career. Moving people on and off accounts is not a good idea all the time unless that account has churned. The reason I say that is relationships are tough to make and keep. If you continue to move people off and shift them around, some those relationships can be broken and there could be a trust issue. So I've always been cognizant of moving people off account unless there's a good reason to move them off because honestly, and I've done this throughout my career because I've deployed 300 data AI solutions, the relationship I built was trust. And trust with somebody is very hard to earn. It's easy to lose, but hard to gain. And it's something to bear in mind as you're going through the process. What lessons can I learn from you guys? It's always critical with any sort of account is management of that account. Whether you have a person that's got overall responsibility for the account, and then you have people that have product functionality report. But the key is a common flavor, a common touch point going in. One of the frustrations clients have is they get contacted by 10 different people from a company and they just don't want that. What they want is a coordinated effort in terms of how they're going to approach the account, where the targeting of that account is, and how you can look at potential expanding use cases. On a prospect, it's a little different. It still needs to have proper account management depending on where we want to target, in terms of the growth, whether it's cybersecurity, data and AI, and that. You can leverage Zoom information. Now, I'm always cognizant of that because sometimes with Zoom information, it's not always up to date, but it'll allow you at least go to follow people on LinkedIn. What I have noticed is people don't always return messages on LinkedIn, so that's not probably a good way to reach out to contact. It's better to follow people and then write blogs and respond back to them and find a way to kind of work that way and just keep following those people around. I've also used targeted blogs as part of the overall driving traffic, driving knowledge sharing, driving opportunities with clients and prospects. And that's how I built my reputation over 8 years. Is I was a doer and I drove results. And when you drive results, they get you pulled into tough account situations, which I was pulled in throughout my career. I was kind of known as a closer because I was able to pull things together and get things resolved. Because on a technical side, I knew the product. On a business side, I knew how to kind of address their questions. So it's critical on that in terms of things because you are selling a solution, not a product. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen is they try to sell multiple products, and that just frustrates clients. It's also important to establish customer advocacy groups in somewhere you can have interaction where you can invite prospects as well as clients to have engagement, whether that's on site or a webinar. And those can be a product roadmap, it can be a demo, it could be anything. You invite them in to try to draw attention to them. You get a note of them, then you can thank them for attending the session. If you can do anything follow up after that, they can reach out to you.